Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Lucore Automotive. Today, we're continuing with our Big Block Teardown. This is the 1973 400 cubic inch Big Block Mopar. It is specifically the motor that came out of Katrina 1973 Charger Chick's 1973 Dodge Charger. That was originally a 318 car. Somebody had in the past had swapped it to a 400, but it's a Smog era 400 that really didn't have much balls. It was hurt in a couple of different ways. It just wasn't a great power plant. But the 400 cubic inch Mopar is an excellent building block to be able to make a stroker kit on, somewhere in the name of like 500 cubic inches, which is the plan for this guy. And then once it's done, it's going to go in a vehicle that hasn't actually been purchased yet. We're going to be looking for like a Dodge D200 to be able to haul her Charger around with to events and things. So first off, make a healthy heart. But before we can do that, we got to tear this thing down, get it to the machine shop, and go through the whole process to be able to bring this thing back to life. Before we can do that, we got to get going. So, time to start tearing this thing down. 400 cubic inch Big Block Mopar Teardown. Obviously, the heads are already off, the intake's off. This should be quick and easy. We'll see if we find anything scary going on it, but if you're interested, stay tuned. Here we go. In a previous video to this, I actually did tear down the top end of this. Pulled the intake manifold off, pulled the heads off. So we don't have a ton of work to do, but I've never cracked the oil pan off it. We got to pull the accessories off because that's going to actually probably be what goes over onto her motor that's going into her Charger, which is the 451 cubic inch stroker version of a 400, which we have already built, that's already ready to rock and roll and going into that car for the spring. So I need to pull the accessory drive off this thing. I haven't really gone any further than this. It is a Smog era motor, so it's like, you know, 8-to-1 compression. There's a pretty serious amount of in the hole here on all these pistons. So, you know, it's definitely not a performance motor at the moment, but as I said, it's got a lot of potential. These Big Block Mopars have a huge amount of stroke capability on them. And the idea here with this one, as long as this block checks out, and as long as everything else is okay, we're probably going to go with like the 499 cubic inch stroker kit from Eagle, which 500 cubic inches should be enough torque to be able to haul things around. Also, the plan is we already had the heads rebuilt previously for this motor that we ended up having all sorts of problems with, but Rob at PRI has already rebuilt those heads and we're already ready to rock and roll with those. He resolved our issue as far as why they refused to rev, so we're going to bolt those motorhome heads on this 499 cubic inch Mopar build once it's done, and we're going to truly test what those motorhome heads are capable of since we hobbled them in the Horsepower Wars video. If you haven't watched the Big Block Wars video, it's actually a pretty good video. It compares the Chevy 454, the Pontiac 455, Olds 455, and the 451 stroker from the Mopar, which is again built on a 400. So that's a pretty cool video. If you haven't watched that, it's up here. It's I think it's our most popular video that's ever been watched on here, so you maybe have already seen it. But anyway, enough talking, more wrenchy. I got things to get done, and then I got to get this over to PRI and get this process going. So here we go. Time to start working. Get the plug wires out of our way here. This is kind of one of those moments, if you guys have watched any of the 73 Charger Chick build process, where you kind of make do, you make do, try to use something that's not that great, try to make it work for you. And it, you know, it did for a little while. It was a decent motor, but we just had never-ending problems with it, and it never really made any kind of good power, which was a little frustrating. Hence why we ended up building an entirely new motor for it. Now this is probably that point in the video. We'll go ahead and get this over with early, where I talk about the fact that I prefer to use hand tools versus power tools. Personal preference. You can do whatever you like. I'm just a hand tools kind of guy. Plus, I'm working out right now. This is me burning calories instead of just going zip, zip, zip. It does take a lot longer to do. Yeah, we just put this water pump on here like not that long ago. Spoiler alert, I did. Don't lose your hardware. Create yourself a nightmare. Every single one of these bolts and nuts and stuff are just disgusting. It's my rest of my alternator bracket. Why that's, you know, why you needed to mount that to the engine mount, I don't know, but yay Mopar. One thing I will say that learned from me is keep track of your hardware and keep it all together. Otherwise, you're going to come up missing your nuts. Joking aside, all of these little bolts and nuts and pieces of things that, no big deal, I'll just put new stuff on there. I made that mistake once, and I ended up spending hundreds of dollars on new hardware that I didn't necessarily need to spend. But this motor is going to go together with all brand new stuff anyway, so not necessarily something that I mind with this particular motor, but for those of you who want to take it apart, keep track of your nuts. Hey look, that water pump looks almost brand new. It is. It looks like I was just in there. Alright, so let's go ahead and get our power steering pump off and finish cleaning all the rest of the stuff up. One good benefit of everything being covered in oil and gross and schmutz is the fact that most of these bolts will come out because they've had rust protection on them. A lot of these long bolts, especially things like this, you can see how long this power steering bolt is. It goes into the block, but a lot of times with all this exposed surface here, that bolt will get rusty, but it's perfect because it's been coated in gross. Alright, our steering pump off, the bracket for the bracket. Mopar guys like your brackets. One thing we actually have kind of considered is going to a serpentine drive system on this, or at least on her nice motor, because it would be kind of nice to clean up all the V-belt situation and go with just a nice clean billet aluminum front mounted piece here and mount all the accessories directly to that. We'll see. We've had a conversation with the folks over at CVF. That might be a thing that we do. CVF, if you're looking, if you're paying attention, maybe let's have a conversation. I don't need these hoses, so I'm not going to remove these the proper way. I'm going to use a razor blade and remove them that way. Off. Corroded to heck anyway. Would definitely not want to use those again. I'm going to vent for a minute. I didn't put this motor together. But when you're putting things together, make it easy to access again, you know? Somebody else is going to be here. It might not be you, but somebody else eventually will be here. Why would you put that worm clamp facing the head into the distributor and the latch of the distributor? Why would you do that? I can't get an 8mm socket on it. I can't get a screwdriver on it. Why would you do that? stupidity. Hey, that one actually came off. A little crunchy and grimy in there. Yeah. Ooh. Yeah, we're definitely going to need a new water pump housing. That's disgusting. You could tell this thing had a Krylon rebuild on it by the amount of paint that's on all of the little pieces that you didn't pull off before you just threw some spray paint down on it. Krylon Kenny job. Alright, distributor's out. That's easy enough. Do. Drive gear still in there. Pull that out in a moment. Again, shocking new looking part, didn't it? Yeah. Because it was. Might as well get this fuel pump pulled off here since we got easy access to it. One thing I will say that is nice about all this old school stuff, it's exceptionally easy to work on. Take this bolt off, take that bolt off, take this off, take that off, and they all come off. They're real simple. There's not a lot of massive technology here. There's not a lot of sensors. Yeah, you know, none of that stuff. They're very simple. Even if you don't know what you're doing, it's still pretty easy to take apart and put back together again. Alright, fuel pump's off. Alright, let's get the oil filter adapter off this side. And let's just go ahead and pull that whole thing off there. Again, everything covered in schmutz and decades of grime means all this stuff comes apart pretty easily. Maybe you don't really need to fix those oil leaks. It's rust prevention. Alright, oil pump drive gear. Doesn't look horrible. No real bad grooving in it. Nothing that really scares me. Again, we're going to probably replace all this stuff anyway with all new stuff, but if you weren't, I'd probably put that back together. We never did have a problem with oil pressure on this motor, so it's probably okay. Coming along. Not sure if we'll keep the water pump housing unit with the exit down here or not. There are a couple different versions of this where you can relocate the hose location depending on where you're going to have your radiator, what kind of radiator you're running. So we'll deal with that when we get there. That's not an immediate concern. Let's go ahead and pull off these pulleys and we can roll this thing over, pull the oil pan. All right, Mopar guy, what size is the crank bolt? Of course I made a mess. Jeff just wandered over here to throw down a rag. It's a standing joke in the shop that no matter what I do, I always make a mess. Well, set my oil filter housing unit down and didn't have it quite positioned correctly, so it ended up Oops. Leaking on the floor. Oops. Alright, Mopar people. What size is this crank bolt? Huh? Oh! 6 liter fired up. That's good news. Sounds like money! Let me go get the proper tools to remove this one. This might go to a power tool. I don't know that I want to try to do this by hand. We'll see. One more bolt on that front cover on that side. On that water pump housing unit. And these bolts are, you know, they got some rust on them, but shoulders are still all there. It's really not that bad. You will also notice that these are slotted because these do thread in, thread out. Unfortunately, since these have been in here forever, I don't know that they're going to thread out, but we'll give it at least a little bit of a try and see if they do. If they don't, it is what it is. Obviously this one you can't pull the bolt without pulling that tube. Nope. Who had 1 1/4 inch? You got a prize if you did. This does turn over. But that's top dead center. That's how in the hole it is. Some room for improvement there. Alright, let's get a power tool and knock this thing off of here. Quit screwing around, Austin. Piece of cake. There is a time and a place for power tools. Huzzah! Piece of cake. So we're going to need to put our dampener puller on there to pull that off the snout of the crankshaft. I'm going to go ahead and pull off these spool mounts for the engine mounts just for cleanliness purposes and because I got the tools to do it right now. Pull those bolts off. And I got to separate this front cover off the front of the motor. I can get to the timing set once I pull the harmonic balancer off. Then we'll flip it over and pull the oil pan. I've mentioned numerous times in this, a lot of these parts are going to be replaced. This is another one of those things. I do have a brand new set of spool mounts with new bushings, because these bushings are short. Yeah, we're not reusing those, especially with the amount of torque that new motor makes. Oh, you bastards, I hate you, Chrysler! Who does this? Okay, so can't pull that bolt out that way. And I can't get, these are 5/8 heads. I can't get a 5/8 inch socket in that, obviously. I can't get a 5/8 inch wrench because of this tab in the top of the block. So how do I hold this while turning this? Why did you have to over-engineer engine mounts, Chrysler? What the heck? This is not rocket surgery. Okay, that comes off nice and easy. Nope. That's just going to round it off. There's some light right there. There you go.
eBay wrenches for the win.
All right, so the proper tool for the job is an eBay thin wall box wrench.
Yep, good.
Thanks for the help. Well, that was a little bit stupid, but it's off. I can see why this is not a popular motor mount setup across the board. Whatever, they're off. All right, time for you guys to explain me some more Mopar 1970s thinking. Why would you put one necessarily removable bolt behind this up pipe? Let me show you this. So I have all of the other bolts that are off this water pump housing unit. In order to pull the water pump housing, that comes off. And I got to pull this off to pull off the timing cover, right? However, you put one bolt right here that goes through the water pump housing unit and bolts to the top of the block right here. So you can see the threads right there. But this carries coolant. So you know it's going to get corroded. And it's corroded as hell. And you can feel, I don't know if you can see that, probably not, but somebody has grabbed this with like a pair of channel locks to screw that thing in there as tight as possible. What's the thinking here, guys? And this is what you got to work with on the top. It's just a flat head. So what was the thinking here? Mopar folks, explain this to me. Time to get the settling torch and see if we can get this thing loose. Yeah. Ah! So the answer is a whole lot of heat. Heat. Works the same way on women. I don't want to. Use a pry driver. Just a real big screwdriver. She's coming out, baby. All right. Stupid. Whatever. All right, so we can pull that last piece off. Got my vacuum here. I can leave this one attached. Don't care. Pull this off. Oh, well, that's easy. Normally that doesn't just fall off. There we go. Cast iron water pump housing unit. All right. So, dampener, timing cover. I'm gonna pull this thing, rest thing apart. Really? That's funny. Normally you can't pull that by hand.
Some of them make too bad. Some of them don't press on that one.
Wow. Okay. Thanks, sir. All right. Back your harmonic balancer off. Got our bolts all the way around. Pull our timing cover off. And we've got 1, 2 that go up through the bottom of the oil pan. Hold the bottom of that cover on. If my angles are a little weird in this video, I apologize. Richard took the tripod with him, and I don't have another one, so sorry. Okay. Timing cover should come off. Our crank seal still in there. Wasn't leaking. How's our... A little sloppy. Not terrible, but a little sloppy. Okay. Put that with my distributor. Pull the cam gear off. And we can walk this forward, pull the timing set off, roll this thing over. We're down to the short strokes, folks. Down to the short strokes. Yeah. And here, come on. Okay, so let's see if I can pull these lifters out first before I end up dropping them all on the ground. Again, these lifters don't look bad. I don't know if you saw the original video or not, but these lifters don't look bad. Somebody definitely put a camshaft in here in the not too distant past. There's not any dishing. A lot of times you're going to have a wear pattern where it dishes out that center. It's really not that bad. There's no part numbers on these or manufacturer information on these that I can see etched into them anywhere, but they're not terrible. Somebody's been in here in the past. At least put a camshaft in it. I am at least 85% sure that I drained the oil out of this thing. At least 85% sure. Alright. Didn't get all the coolant out of it, but we're good on the motor. We're good on the oil.
You're right, Dean. There was no oil in there.
There was no oil.
You are correct. You drained that.
There was quite a lot of coolant still left. Oops. This oil pan looks great. It's only been dented in like 700 times. Good news is the mop and the bucket right off camera, because when I'm working on a vehicle, messes will happen. When I'm working on a motor, messes will definitely happen. Well, other than the very impressive denting on the bottom of the oil pan, it's actually a lot cleaner than I expected it to be. Not a lot of terrible sludging in there. We'll definitely not be reusing this oil pan, but it's not horrible. That's good news. All right. Actually, there's some rust on the crank. That's a little weird. So, oil pickup screen doesn't look too bad. A lot of times there's a bunch of junk that's in there. There's not much. Little tiny bits. Nothing serious, nothing to worry about. There is, like I said, some rust actually on that counterweight, which is a little weird, but no big deal. So, screw out the oil pickup, which is super simple. Just turn that sucker out of there. I got to remove this rear plate, which holds the rear main, and then pull our main caps off. Start knocking out our rod bolts, and yeah, and then we're good and going. Keep on rolling. We're almost done. Oh, and pull the camshaft out. Thankfully, this wasn't put on by any trolls. Again, we won't be using this oil pickup. It's an inexpensive thing to replace, and I don't want a chance that there's anything in there that we would get into a new build. Plus, we're going to be doing a new oil pan anyway, so not necessary. But the bottom end of this motor is actually surprisingly clean. I'm actually very happy with this. Normally, when you got a lot of mileage on something, or you got a poorly maintained motor, you're going to find a lot of baked on grease and oil and grime and junk inside here. It's really not bad at all. It's really not bad. I'm pretty happy with it. I don't see anything as far as grinding marks on any of the rods. One thing you would find if this has been balanced in the past is there'd be grinding on the tops of the rods here, on the big end of the rod, to get the balance correct. And all of these rods appear to be original. They haven't been rebuilt, as far as I can tell. Bottom end hasn't been rebuilt. But it does look like it was at least either a low mileage motor or a reasonably well maintained motor. So let me get these last little bits out here and we'll start knocking pistons and rods out, and yeah, let's finish her off. Finish her off. Almost done. There we go. Just the proper amount of leverage. Still stayed on the crank. Whatever. Well, I'd say at some point in time somebody had a little bit of an oil leak, given there's RTV over everything on this. That's alright. My battery's about cooked. It's blinking at me at the moment. So I'm going to go ahead and start pulling these rods and pistons. And that part's not real exciting. It's the same thing over and over and over again, but you know, zip off the nuts, pull the caps off, knock the piston and rod down, rotate the crank, do it again, do it again, do it again. Do that 8 times, and that'll get you to where we're going to be next, which is being able to pull the crank out, and then we're done, and pull the camshaft out. Remember that, pull the camshaft out. Yeah, so I'm going to go charge this battery, and you will see me in just a second when I already have the bottom end torn down. Be right back. So we got all of our rods and pistons out. Crank is ready to pull. We've got some interesting mixed signals here. Some of these pistons look pretty dang new. None of them show much of any side skirt wear. There's a little bit, but not what you would expect. The rings look decent. There is no aftermarket stamping anywhere on these pistons that I can see. There also is no Chrysler stamping anywhere on them. But none of the caps have been machined, so there's nothing's been balanced. However, there are marking stamps on the sides. You're probably not going to be able to see that, but there is an 8 on the side of that, and there is an 8 on the side of that rod to keep these two matched up. Interestingly, there's also dimpling on the top that denotes this is number 8. And they all have that. You can see the dimpling on the top. They don't all necessarily have the stamping on the side, but they all have the dimpling. All seem to move reasonably well as far as the wrist pins go. Until you get to number 1, and that one doesn't do so well. It will move, but she's definitely a lot tighter than the others were. Bearing wise, you're into the brass on a lot of these things. Some of them more so than others. The rearmost one was definitely way into the brass. So you've got silver, which is your top layer, then you got brass, which is your bottom layer. So sparkly stuff showing up in the oil changes from silver to coppery gold. You can see that one's got it as well. So, you know, it's got some wear to it. Obviously, it wasn't an original motor that went back to, that was all stock. But as far as I can tell, they are the original pistons and they are the original rods. I would have thought these pistons would have had Chrysler stampings on them, but they don't. I'll clean off the piston tops and we'll see whether or not they're oversized. I don't think they are. But it also does have cleveite bearings in it. These bearings are clevites and they are standards. So interesting mix. It's probably something where somebody put rings and bearings in it, put head gaskets on it, and then shipped it. You know, put some paint on it, and that was that. Because that is kind of where you know, that was the old school. That's how you rebuild it: is rings, bearings, gaskets, and put some paint on it. So there we go. That's where we are. Crank is in semi-decent shape. There's nothing that I'm feeling that's real bad. Maybe would turn it if we were going to rebuild it, but we're not planning on using this crank. We're going to be doing a stroker crank and a stroker kit, so it's going to have new rods, pistons, crankshaft, all that kind of fun stuff. So I don't really worry about that. Block seems to be in good shape. It's not scuzzy. There's nothing that's real bad in here. At least nothing that would really concern me about it. Camshaft, again, it's wiped out a bit, but it's not disgusting. It is not the original camshaft that's in it. The lifters didn't look too bad. So all in all, you know, maybe it was rebuilt in the mid-90s, early 2000s, something like that. Didn't have a ton of miles on it, but it never had, you know, it was still a low compression, kind of gutless 400. So it would have a little bit of rumble to it, but it really wouldn't do what we're asking it for. But the block is good. I've already got a good set of heads, motorhome heads that are sitting over at Performance Research. I am going to take this thing and stick it in our hot tank, because one of the benefits of being here is we actually have a hot tank. So I'm going to hot tank this block, and that way I can knock all the scuzz off of it before I take it to Rob. Then the next video you see is going to be me taking this block over to Rob's, and we're going to go through the whole machining process over at Performance Research Inc. And we're going to do the whole build process. We're going to document the whole thing. We're going to show you how the whole thing works. We did this a long time ago with them. It's been a long time since we shared any of that kind of stuff, and a lot of people I think will be interested in seeing the whole process of machining and how it works the proper way. All of the things that go into making that motor rebuild happen, beyond just rings and bearings and, you know, all that process. So we're going to show you everything. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this. I'm not by any means a professional Big Block Mopar engine teardown technician. I'm sure I did some things you wouldn't have done, and that's fine. It came apart. I didn't hurt myself. I did make a huge mess, but that's part of car stuff. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. I'll see you on the next one. Next week I'll have this thing over with Rob. I don't know when that'll be as far as video-wise. It won't be too long from now. But $4.99 stroker, Mopar, Big Block, all that fun stuff. Iron-headed still. It's going to be a heck of a nice motor, and we're going to run it on the dyno when it's done, so we can see exactly what this thing is capable of with 9.5 to 1 compression through those 452 motorhome heads that everybody said they couldn't flow. We're going to see exactly what they will do when they've got a camshaft and a rocker combination that works correctly. And yeah, should be fun, hopefully. Or I'm wasting a whole bunch of time and money and building a motor that I don't need, that I don't want, that's not going to be good for a vehicle that I don't currently own. That's also possible. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. We'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.